You're listening to the official podcast of Bloodstock Open Air Festival. Bloodstock Radio.
No defense. Welcome to Bloodstock Radio podcast number 32. My name is Squatter, and that was the latest single from Bloodstock 2018 band Venom Inc. That's called War, and they've also just released a lyric video for it, and you can catch them around the UK between March 9th and 13th in Bristol, Manchester, Glasgow, Birmingham and London in that order. And we've got such a jam-packed show tonight that I am going to pretty much shut up and go straight into our Metal to the Masses updates. And then we've got a guest section from the lead singer of Hell's Gazelles, who played Bloodstock in 2015 as the winners of the Oxford Metal to the Masses. This is Bloodstock Radio. Off we go.
Metal to the Masses update.
Hello folks, this is Chris from Metal to the Masses commentary once again. We've just had our last of 6 heats here at the Arches, and our final 2 entrants into the semi-finals are Barbican and Vengeful Atonement. We are back on February 25th with our first semi-final.
Hi, Nick here from Metal to the Masses Bristol. Our first heat is this Saturday, 17th of February, and it's to be held at the Exchange. Doors are at 6 p.m, and it's £5 entry. There are 6 bands competing, and they are Helldown, False Flags, Redshift, Pillar, Voluntas and Bear Pit. 3 of the 6 will progress to the next round through a 50% vote, 50% judged basis. Come on down, support the bands, see you in the pit.
Okay, this is Squatter with the Metal to the Masses Hitchin Heat 2 update with Nick. How you doing, mate?
Very well, thanks. Yourself?
I'm good. Didn't manage to make it down there this week, but I heard that it was very good, and it was a good atmosphere down there.
Another amazing heat, to be honest. We're only on heat 2, and so far I am blown away by the quality of the bands. I'm not just saying that. It's tough. Very tough.
Cool. Well, I'll try and get down there again, but give us the results from last night then. Okay,
so the 4 bands that competed, Atork and St Fenton the Tainted went through.
Yeah.
The other 2 bands, Synthetic and Black Atlas, have got very high scores. Didn't quite get through though, as we know only 2 bands can go through.
Yeah. And you got Heat 3 next week?
Yeah, Heat 3 next week. So Heat 3 we got bands The White Dragon, Earthbound, Godhanger and Praetorian.
Okay, and that is at Club 85.
Club 85 in Hitchin, the best music venue ever. But myself and Bob Marden will be running it as usual. So if you're in the area, come down. If you're not in the area, you should be. And I'll see you there.
Hey Squatter, hey Bloodstockers, this is Fede here from Metal to the Masses Glasgow. Hope you're all good tonight. We are well into the second round in Glasgow here. 3 heats done, more to come. At the moment, as it stands, bands going through to the quarterfinals are A Ritual Spirit, Darkness Divine, The Colony, Vantage Point, Sundrown, Ifrian, Satiracy and Nocturne Wolf. By the time this goes out on Thursday, we'll have another heat in the go-in, so there's more to come. And also next weekend we shall announce our special guest headliner for our final, which is on the 11th of May, as per usual in Ivory Black. So stay tuned, check the page, and you'll get to know. Speak soon. Bye.
By the fans, for the fans.
Hello Bloodstockers, this is Cole Bryant from Hell's Gazelles and you're listening to Bloodstock Radio. There we go, that was of course Walk by the Mighty Pantera. Now, in my day-to-day life I actually work in a pub, and I got chatting about music to this bloke the other night, and I said, you know, I'm a huge fan of Judas Priest and bands like that, and he said, yeah, Priest are a great band. I was playing Angel Retribution in my car the other night, and I looked down at the speedometer and I realised I was doing 120 miles an hour. So, this is a song from the Angel Retribution album that made that man break the law. This is Hell Rider. accompanied there by Judas Priest, the mighty Judas Priest, one of my very favourite bands of all time, and of course Halford is one of my very, very favourite singers. And needless to say, you can catch them later on this year at Bloodstock Open Air. What a treat for a headliner is that. And they'll be celebrating their new album, Firepower. They already released a couple of tracks from that. They released Lightning Strike and the title track Firepower itself, and those 2 tracks have already been brilliant. I've been watching their Facebook page actually, and at the end of their interviews they're doing little snippets of different tracks, and already I think this album is going to be something very special, so I cannot wait to get my copy of that. So recently the heavy metal community was rocked by the fact that Slayer are only going to be doing one last tour before they call it quits, so I thought, hey, let's do a Slayer track. We're going to do one of my favourites. This one is Angel of Death. of Death from the Rain in Blood album by the legendary Slayer, and I'm afraid that is all you're going to get from me tonight. Big thanks for listening, and a big thank you to Squatter for inviting me to do another little bit here on Bloodstock Radio. I've been Cole Bryant from Hell's Gazelles. I will see you in the near future.
Hey, this is Abby from X Method in California, USA, and you're listening to the best Bloodstock Radio.
Yes, indeed. Massive thanks to Cole for that. And if you would be interested in providing some content for the podcast, then please do get in touch by emailing us at podcast@bloodstockfestival.com. Okay, I'm just going to very quickly tell you that our 3 winners in last week's Bloodshot Dawn competition were Kevin Adamson, Thomas Sim and Chris Lyon. So we'll be in touch with the 3 of you to send you each a patch and a copy of their new album, Reanimation. And the rest of the show is now going to be taken up with a fascinating interview that I had recently with my friend Lena, who's got quite a story to tell. So let's get into that. We'll finish off with some music, and I'll see you next week on Bloodstock Radio. Enjoy.
The big interview.
Okay, next up on Bloodstock Radio, this is Squatter, and we're having a chat to Lena Metalina, as she's known in the metal word. But Dr. Lena, is it Khatib or Khatib? What are we going for?
In Arabic, it's Khatib, if anyone can pronounce it.
Oh, well, Khatib is not bad.
Ooh.
Do you know where that comes from? That's Welsh. Grew up in Wales, so, you know, you get lots of Llangolans and Llandudnos and so, you know, that's...
Well, I can also reply in Arabic, if you like.
Yeah, go on. And you give me a long Arabic name then to start us off with then.
Not necessarily an Arabic name. I can say Ahla wa sahla feek. This is welcome in Arabic.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go then. So we got 2 welcomes there. All good. Okay, so yes, Lena, yeah, you and I met about a year ago, roughly. I can remember meeting you outside the World's End, outside the Underworld for Mr. Mick Wood. Lovely Mick Monster introduced us.
Absolutely, the Mayor of London.
The Mayor of London. He should be, shouldn't he?
Shouldn't knows Mick, everyone.
Shouldn't Mick? No, but it's not what he knows. It's what he says and what he does. Mick, that's it.
He wants to sort it out.
The campaign starts now. Hashtag Monster for Mayor. That is the way to do it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so we met about a year ago when you were the manager of Blackium. So I had a chat with those chaps outside there, and then I don't think I saw you for a few months again until Uprising in Leicester.
Because I keep travelling all the time.
We know that, and this is where I found out about your sort of fascinating background with stuff, because you and I just having a bit of a chat, and I'd obviously noticed on Facebook that you're here, there, and everywhere, and you travel a lot for your job, Lena. What do you actually do? And then you kind of just wowed me with this job that you do, and it's quite. I'm going to read out your current title: the head of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House, which is a think tank, I believe. Yeah, is that right?
Yes, the official name for Chatham House is the Royal Institute of International Affairs.
Yeah, I've got that written down as well. Yeah, so it's quite good.
Well done. I've
done a bit of research, even though
you have a reputation for doing research before interviews.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of rare.
No, okay, you never know. I didn't used to. I used to have to wing it all the time, but once I started working for Bloodstock, I had to get my arse in gear a little bit, so that's the way it went. So that's a grandiose title, but what is it that you actually do on a day-to-day basis, and what is the overall sort of description of your role?
Basically, it's a job in policy analysis. So I work on Middle East politics, which means I look at all the lovely conflicts in the Middle East, and I try to make sense of them, and then I try to explain what the conflicts are and their dynamics and what should be done about them to both politicians, policymakers in the UK, in Europe, the US, worldwide really, and also to the public. So I'm in the media quite a bit, trying to explain to the general public what is going on in the region.
Yeah. Does anyone listen to you? Does anyone actually pay any attention and do anything about it? Or is it just I'm talking specifically about governments there and about politicians, because I think a lot of the time they sort of, they just need to tick a box to say, well, we've taken both sides of the story. So, so is it a frustrating in that respect when you're sort of telling people, look, this is the situation, and then nothing gets done about it?
Yeah, unfortunately, most of the time, this is the situation. I tell them what I think they should do, and they say, oh, that's very interesting, and then they do nothing. something, or they do what they want anyway.
Yeah.
But I always say what makes the job worthwhile is that I hold them accountable. So they have no excuse to say, we didn't know, nobody told us, there was no alternative. It's publicly documented, because everything we do publish in this job is publicly available. So the documents are there to say, well, someone did say that was a bad idea. Someone did say you could do this and that about it.
Yeah. So is it a case of public speaking and private speaking and lectures and talks and everything?
Yes, everything. A mixture of lots of conferences, lots of public events that anyone can come to, private closed-door events that involves just policymakers or people working in politics in the Middle East and people like myself. Lots of TV and radio, lots of writing in newspapers and different websites. So yeah, it's no 2 days are the same, basically.
Yes. And yet you still managed to fit in quite a lot of metal into all that as well, which we'll come to in a bit. But I want to talk to you basically about how you first got into metal, because you're from Lebanon, yeah. Mm-hmm. So rewind us back to that then. So the situation when you were growing up in Lebanon, when you first started to get into metal, and where you first heard it, and how you came to love it.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Lebanon mainly in the 80s, and at that time there was a civil war raging in the country, and then the war ended in the early 90s, and I was a teenager by then, and it was a case of, right, now there's no war, what do we do? And a lot of teenagers had exactly the same idea, which is, let's form a band. And so the country was full of metal bands at that time. It was really a very special time in Lebanon. And we just had no reference points, no contact with the outside world outside Lebanon. We just did our own thing. We all just formed bands and mainly played covers, then started composing our own things. And I was a fan of metal because to me, it was real. I mean, I grew up in a context where war was raging, and metal was music that spoke about issues, not just fluffy things like love and romance, which is what pop music tends to focus on. Yeah. And so the music for me was very meaningful.
Yeah. So you were in a band then. So I was going to ask what instrument you play, but I'm sitting here in your living room next to a rather grandiose-looking drum kit. So is that a new thing? Did you play drums back then, or was that a sort of is this a newer acquisition?
Yeah, the drums came after the band, actually. During the days of the band, which is now more than 2 decades ago, I was a keyboardist.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, but I no longer know how to play keyboards, so don't even think about it.
Okay, but drums are what's happening with the drums then? Is that just a sort of end of the day talking to governments, I'm going to come home and smash the hell out of these drums, yeah?
Actually, slightly, yes. I got into drums because I was always curious, and then I took one lesson and I thought, oh my god, this feels like meditation. I was focused on the beat and nothing but the beat, and it felt like therapy. Right. So yes, drums is the way to clear my head.
Have you met many drummers? I would sort of put I don't know, I'm trying to think now who I'm going to get beat up by, but I don't know, odd choice maybe, but
but it works for me.
Yeah.
Maybe because I have politics in my life, I kind of need another extreme to balance things out.
Maybe that's it. So back in Lebanon in those days, it was quite an oppressive regime, and I believe that metal wasn't widely available and wasn't even legal, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, crazily enough, Lebanon is not like the rest of the Arab world where you have like a ruling dictator, but the government is dysfunctional and rather backwards when it comes to things like metal and music and freedom of expression. So every now and then they would arrest people just for being metalheads and said that metal is the music of the devil, it's a social threat, and they started just arresting people and banned metal music altogether.
Wow, so that was when we're talking about the underground over here, it must have been proper underground over here, because I mean, obviously we have situations here where you get, you look at the biggest example of Sophie Lancaster, and we had a friend of ours, Ben, that was beaten up a couple of weeks ago just for being a metalhead and stuff like that, and giving him a shout out there, Ben. I hope he's recovering well and that. But even in this day and age over here in the UK, we're still getting metalheads are getting beaten up just for being metalheads. But when your whole government is actually telling you can't be a metalhead, that's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But we didn't care, so we always found ways around it.
Clearly.
Yeah, I mean, there was a black market for tapes. People would just record whatever they had and passed it on. And then, as you know, I by that time I was an adult, no longer a young teenager, and so by that time I was working in radio in Lebanon, and I decided to take that opportunity and turn the 2 hours that I had on the radio as my own to do whatever I wanted with, to turn it into a metal show.
All right, cool. So what sort of year are we talking then, round about?
This was, the show started in 1997, so I presented the show for 2 years, 97 and 98.
Okay.
And crazily enough, metal was officially banned at that time, but because the country was recovering from civil war, it was a complete mess, and the government did not even know that the music that I was playing was the music that was actually banned. So they banned metal without really knowing what metal sounded like.
Wow. So was it like a pirate radio station in effect then?
No,
really? Or
it was public radio. It was national radio. It was the official radio station owned by the government, which is rather ironic.
And yet you sneakily managed to just play metal on it.
Yeah, no one ever knew, because they didn't know what metal actually sounded like. They just thought, oh, this is the music of the devil. Oh, Lena plays pots and pans music. So they just didn't make the connection between the
pots
two.
And pans
Yeah, that's
music.
what they used to call it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So what sort of stuff would you have been playing around then? Were you more of a sort of classic sort of metal head, or was it sort of metal of the time? How accessible was it to actually get it to play on your show? Because obviously I would assume that if it's banned in the country, you can't just walk into a record shop and buy the music. How did you actually source the music?
Yeah, I mean, I sourced the music first, my own collection, private collection. Second of all, the people around me, including the listeners. So I actually would go on the radio and say to people, bring in whatever music you have at home and play it. And so people would actually come to the studio and hang out and exchange tapes and play their CDs and tapes. We actually had cassette tapes at the time on the radio. Plus, I at that time used to go to Syria to buy music, because Syria at the time did not ban metal. That came later. But when they didn't ban metal, a lot of Lebanese people, clocked that you could just go next door to Syria and buy metal and smuggle it back into Lebanon, which is exactly what I did.
So you were a smuggler as well. So we're ticking off things. We've got your real sort of day job. Then you're a metal DJ. Mm-hmm. You're in a band, and now you're a smuggler as well. So I'm keeping track of all these. So we're going to keep going with all these. So then okay. So you're carrying on in Lebanon then. So where does the next bit of the story come then? Where do you? When did you first come over to the UK? And was it that sort of time then? You got what were the metal bands that were around at that time in Lebanon?
Well, at that time there were lots of bands, but none of them made it really internationally in terms of metal bands. There were rock bands that made it internationally. There's a band that still exists from that time called The Chords, written Kordz, and they went to the same university that I went to in Beirut, and they're still going, but they're a rock band, not a metal band.
Okay.
Sadly, the metal bands disbanded, apart from one band, which is Blackhium, that I ended up managing.
Yeah.
So they have been in existence, different lineups of course, but in existence since 1995. So I moved to the UK at the end of 1998.
Yeah, I was going to say, I met them at Bloodstock, didn't I? And then, because they played Bloodstock last year, there's no way they've been playing for 20 years. They weren't that old, were they?
No, I mean, the drummer of the band is younger than the band.
Yes, I was going to say
he only just turned 21. So
I was going to say they've aged well if they've managed to do that, because
they age backwards. You see, in metal, this is what happens. You age backwards.
I don't know. I was going to say that, when we met at that Acid Rain gig. You look at H. I think H is definitely going backwards. Yeah, he's jumping around like a kid more than ever. So
yeah, good for him.
Yeah. So tell us about when you first came to the UK then, and what you were doing over here then.
So I first came to the UK to study, and I ended up staying because I just loved it, and it became home. So for me now, London is home. I came to do a PhD, and then I became a university lecturer. So all these serious things that have nothing to do with metal. I actually missed radio so much that I presented a show on student radio when I was at the University of Leicester. It was called One Louder.
Yeah, I was at De Montfort. Remember we were chatting about that uprising, weren't we? Because I was in Leicester for a few years when I was studying at De Montfort. So I went to the paupers side of things. You went to the proper university, and I went to the pretend one.
Oh well,
so,
in the end, a degree is a degree.
Yeah. So okay. So then obviously you sort of carried on with your metal side of things as well as doing your studying and that. And then so how did you end up becoming a band manager and sort of getting involved on that side of things?
Well, what happened is I reconnected with Blackium. Because back in the 90s, when I lived in Lebanon, presented the radio show, I was the first person to play their music on the radio. And then I rediscovered them many years later, 20 years later, basically, in 2015. And I couldn't believe that they were still going. Because obviously, during that time, I was living in the UK, so I wasn't, following as closely what was going on in Lebanon. And I was very moved. And they asked me if I would help them out, and I said yes. So I worked with them for a year and a half, something like that, and it was an interesting experience. But then I quit managing Blackium last year, and since then I decided that I, in addition to managing one band now, which is Nader Sadek, which is an extreme metal supergroup, I decided that I'm just gonna try to use my contacts to help as many bands in the Middle East as I can.
Yeah, and I believe, leading nicely into that you're going to be doing a few little features for us on Bloodstock Radio. So we'll look forward to those coming up and that lot. And while you're jetting about all over the place, if you do us a few little interviews here and there and play us some of this music from around the world, because we're trying to broaden our horizons a little bit this year. We had the Bloodstock Radio podcast last year, and we mainly focused on bands that had played Bloodstock or were playing Bloodstock that year. But we're going to try and sort of broaden our horizons a little bit, and we want to try and get new bands and that sort of thing. So that sort of thing's absolutely great for us. So it's great that you've agreed to do that for us. So we look forward to hearing some of those.
Yeah, and I look forward to the interviews. I mean, these are bands that have not played Bloodstock. These are bands that would love to play Bloodstock. Yeah. They dream of Bloodstock, even dream of attending.
Yeah, well, the thing is that Bloodstock do that. I mean, we've had Scarab over, we've had Blackium last year, and that sort of, so we've had bands from all over the place on that sort of. Hopefully, you never know. We play them. Simon and Vicky have a listen and think they like them. You never know.
Yeah,
some of these bands that you sort of introduce us to.
I mean, I have in my head bands from places like Syria and Iraq, places where I was even personally amazed to see that in the middle of war, metal bands were forming. We're not talking just bands that had already existed, that were kind of going on, like Blackium, for example, but bands that were being formed in the middle of the Syrian conflict, for example. It's really very impressive.
Well, it is. I mean, the thing is, your whole story and their whole story is impressive, because I've been involved in sort of like, the up-and-coming, emerging underground scene here for about 5 years, and you see how hard bands are working and how they've got no money, and they're all really, and some of them get their gear nicked and they get that, but that's, we're here in the UK, we're in a really civilised sort of country, we've got no war, we've got no, and as much as bands are struggling here in inverted commas, that's not really struggling compared to what these bands have had to do to actually, you're in a country where the government actually bans you from playing the type of music that you're playing, and yet you still form a band and still go. That's proper underground, that's proper metal attitude.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when people are at risk of being arrested or even being killed and they still do it, it's very inspiring. I think it makes all of us who live in Europe quite comfortably. We need to take a hard look at ourselves and be grateful. Be grateful for what we have.
Yeah, indeed. Did you ever get arrested?
Yeah. Of course. Okay. Yeah, so. I was arrested, but not for being a metalhead.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I was arrested because the government didn't like the fact that I was making fun of the government.
Okay.
Not that is a crime. It's not officially a crime, but they don't care.
Okay.
So this is the thing. When people get arrested in the Middle East, a lot of the times it's not because they broke the law, it's because the government is corrupt. And the government doesn't tolerate criticism. So you dare criticize, you are thrown in jail.
So what were you actually charged with then?
Hilariously, the actual charge was laughter and sarcasm.
Laughter and sarcasm?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
God.
Which is not illegal, but the government has no sense of humour.
I'd have spent my whole 20s in jail if it was for sarcasm. That'd have been terrible. That's awful.
Yeah,
I don't know about the laughter so much, but definitely the sarcasm would have.
I couldn't believe when they actually wrote that down when they were interrogating me.
Wow.
I thought it was hilarious.
So what was the actual thing that you did? What was it? How did you make people laugh and be sarcastic to them?
about the government.
Yeah.
Basically, at that time, parliamentary elections were taking place in Lebanon. Everyone was campaigning, and I just thought, well, these elections don't really represent me because it's not a free country. Lebanon at that time was under Syrian occupation, and there was a lot of corruption. And so I decided to create a fake campaign, meaning me and some friends took ridiculous photos of ourselves and turned them into kind of election posters. We pretended to be candidates and just stuck the posters on the streets of Beirut. So we were arrested because the government didn't see the funny side.
And how old were you then, roughly?
I was 19.
Wow, you really are a rebel, aren't you?
Yeah, well, now I'm kind of doing it from the other side.
Exactly, yeah, you now do it for a living, I suppose.
Exactly. It's like, okay, so maybe the fake poster campaign didn't work. Let's try policy analysis instead.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I can see from your schedule that you clearly work incredibly hard, and it looks like a really demanding job, and certainly travel-wise. I mean, you seem to be out of the UK more than you were in it last year, but you also play hard as well, because going to all these places, it's always kind of like, I've been to this conference today and done this talk, and now I'm going to this gig in New York or in Washington or in wherever. So you're all over the place at these gigs.
Yeah, I mean, in October 2017, for example, I was in the States and I had various meetings with US government officials. And so I remember going from the State Department quickly to my hotel, changing and running to see Guns N' Roses play the Verizon Center in DC.
And you're going to 70,000 tons of metal, I believe, in the near future. You went last year, I remember, yeah?
Yeah, that was amazing. It was such a surreal experience. I mean, to have a concert in the middle of the ocean is quite something.
Yeah. Who's playing that this year? I haven't even seen the lines.
So many bands. Yeah. I mean, normally the lineup is around 60 bands, and there's music from around 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. almost every day. So I look forward to a few days of no sleep and lots of headbanging, basically.
Yeah, well, it's light work, but with a bit more headbanging then, basically. So you get a few days off it as well.
Yeah.
And and I've also seen, you've been to, where would you say is the sort of the most, I don't know, least known place that you've been to where you've seen a band and just sort of thought, I didn't realise there'd be a metal gig on here, or,
Recently, I went to a festival in Latvia last year, which was in the middle of nowhere, in the countryside, a beautiful setting by a lake. And at the time, I went with a band that I'm friends with from Lebanon called Chimera. They were performing, so I just went with them just to support them, really. Yeah. And it was a really interesting experience. I didn't expect there to be, such an interesting metal scene in Latvia. It's not a big scene at all, but it's there. And people enjoy it. And the funny thing was, there was a member of actually a minister, not even a member of parliament. One of the Latvian ministers was at the gig, and he was, right at the front, headbanging with his shirt off. And because the band I was with were from Lebanon, they looked at him, and because someone pointed him out, and they're like, what a difference this is from the politicians we have in Lebanon who basically, want to arrest us. Yeah. So that was quite an interesting experience.
Yeah, that's crazy. Let's bring it back to Bloodstock a little bit now then, okay? Because I know that you were off around Europe first. Where did you go before? What's the other one that's on the same time as Bloodstock?
Well, I'm not doing that again.
No,
this year I'm just going to go full Bloodstock.
Okay.
Yeah, but last year I was trying to cram... Yeah, I went to Brutal Assault. I was trying to cram in as many festivals as I could, which was rather nuts, but it was a lot of fun. But this year, Judas Priest is performing, and Gojira! Yeah. I am so excited about Gojira.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we're all excited about it. I mean, it's a great lineup this year, as always, to be honest. They always pull them out the bag. So, so it should be another good year in that lot. But obviously, the background that you've had in that sort of thing, even though you weren't managing them anymore at the time, seeing Blackune playing at Bloodstock last year must have given you a real sort of buzz, a real sense of pride to see a band from your country playing at a place like Bloodstock.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the beauty of Bloodstock. I mean, I always say it is a family, and the family is global. It's truly global. And Lebanon is only a small country. It's a country of 4 million people. So to have a band from a tiny country in the middle of the Middle East, play a festival like Bloodstock is always moving. It doesn't matter if I work with the band or not.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Well, we look forward to hearing some more of those over the next weeks and months on the road to Bloodstock. And as I say, you never know. I like to throw seeds. I have no say in who they book. I will point that out. I always point this out. But, I like to sow seeds, and you never know.
You never know. And, just have an open mind and just give these bands a listen and hear their stories and hopefully be inspired.
And aren't you involved with Wacken somewhere this year as well? What's that thing, that Wacken battle, is it?
It's the metal battle. So basically they have a music competition in different countries, and then the finalists all compete at Wacken in Germany in the summer at the festival. So the Sweden metal battle people invited me to chair the jury for the finals for the Sweden metal battle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
excellent.
It's pretty amazing. And it's going to be an all-female jury, which is pretty cool.
That's cool. So when's that taking place then?
It's going to be on the 21st of April, and they've had, I think, 176 submissions to the metal battle. Yeah, so I'll be the one leading the selection of the finalists.
So that's 176 in Sweden?
Yes.
Wow. So this is kind of like a global Metal to the Masses then? This is like Metal to the Masses that Bloodstock do, but around the UK. But all countries send in a representative.
Yes, basically.
Wow, cool. So why Sweden? Had you been? How did you get hooked in by the Swedish people? Why are you not doing? Did the UK send someone? Do we have someone?
Well, actually, the countries are selected through a lottery, because you can imagine you can't have 200 countries play every year. So every year they do a draw. And the 38 countries that make it in the draw have metal battles. So Sweden is one of them for this year. And I'd met the person who runs the Sweden metal battle when I was at Wacken in 2015, at the time with Blackium. And he just kept in touch with me and has been following what I do. And he just one day said, would you like to do this?
Wow.
So I'm very, very, very happy.
So you're a chairperson of all these things in work, and then you chair metal things in play.
Yes, and hilariously, I was recently at this workshop with people from the Swedish government, and I mentioned to them that, I'll be going to Sweden in April, and they said, what for? And I explained what it was, and one of them said, no way! One person turned out to be a guitarist in an extreme metal band as well.
Oh, wow.
So there are people like me out there who both do politics and metal.
Yeah, every now and again, if I'm at a business meeting or something like that, you'll sort of spot someone that he's in a suit and that, but every now and again you'll see a little festival wristband peeking out, or a Sophie wristband or something like that, and you're just kind of like, we can spot our own, Yeah,
exactly.
Metalheads everywhere.
Yes, another member of our amazing species.
Yeah, cool. Well, that sounds great, the Wacken thing. That's going to be really exciting for you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So, just returning to what you said before about Nader Sadek. So, the way I understand this is that he's actually he's a performer, he's an artist, rather than an actual musician primarily, but he sort of curates these supergroups and gets these extreme metal musicians together, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So, he is Egyptian-American, he's based in Cairo, and he has worked with so many interesting musicians from very high-profile extreme metal bands like Mayhem, Marduk, Obscura, Morbid Angel, Nile, you name it. And he puts together a temporary lineup of musicians from these different bands who play one-off shows, and then the next kind of set of shows, it's a whole other set of people who come together and perform the music. But the music is always original Nader Sadek music that's composed by the cohort of musicians who are involved in this international project.
All right. So where do they play? Because I have not heard of this. Have they played over here yet? Have they got anywhere near here? Or
they played in Bristol in 2017 at the Bristol Death Fest.
All right.
But they've played shows all over the world. The last shows were in New York and Chicago, and they're headlining in Nepal in March and playing a festival in Germany in the summer. They played the Netherlands Death Fest, for example. So it's a very active project, and in addition to the extreme metal supergroup, Nader himself is also a visual artist, and he directs music videos, and he just recently co-directed Inquisition's new music video from Chaos They Came.
Cool. Well, that's must be excellent. That must be great though to just be, because obviously from your point of view, I suppose you might get a bit of a sneak preview, but obviously you get to meet all these other musicians from all these like amazing bands all the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went to Cairo, for example, in November because Nader at that time was working on a project with Carl Sanders from Nile and a couple of other musicians, and he just said, come hang out with us. We're composing new music and it's a side project for Carl, and it was just really cool. So for me, it's a great opportunity to meet these really amazing musicians from all over the world.
Yeah, cool. So that's another string to your bow then.
Well, I enjoy it a lot, and it is really very special for me to be doing this on top of everything else I do. It's just the enjoyable side of life.
Is there any recorded stuff from Nader? Is there stuff that you could send to us that we could play on Bloodstock Radio? Because I think that we've got a lot of extreme metal fans at Bloodstock, as you know. So yeah, I think we'd definitely like to play some of that sometime. Yeah,
absolutely. There's an album already out and an album in the making right now.
Cool, excellent. Well, we'll definitely have a look for that, and we'll get some on the show.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. All right, well, thanks for talking to us, Lena, and fascinating story that you've got there. As I say, that's the proper, true heavy metal underground life that you've lived and that you're still living now. So, well done.
Yes, well done, metal, for keeping me sane, basically.
Cool. All right, so we'll play out with a Blackium track then, shall we? So, choose a Blackium track and we'll play out with that.
Let's say The Line of Fear, because I always belly dance to that when they play it live.
Okay, we can put it on here now and you can try that if you want.
Okay.
Okay, this is Blackium with Line of Fear.
they knew how horrible and cruel this life that we're meant to live. Walking into light, walking out of night, freedom tastes so
By the fans, for the fans. Bloodstock Radio.